It's been a bad year. We all know it's been a bad year. It's been a fucking shocking year. But here comes, I think for many of you, whatever your personal and immediate allegiance is, here comes one of this year's pieces of good news. Would you give as warm a welcome as you can manage to, and sadly not very well, Dr. Caroline Lucas.
Thank you so much. Well, it's great to see you here. And I only wish it wasn't a Saturday, because I want the MPs to be in there, because I want them to see the commitment and the passion and the energy and the pressure that you represent here today. Because the truth is that there's far more political leadership on the streets of London here today than there is in all the grandeur of the Palace of Westminster. Because we have a Prime Minister who can find time to go to Zurich to shore up a failed football bid, and can't find time to go to Cancun to try to shore up a failing climate bid. We have 650 MPs in there, but only 12 of them could find time to go to the one debate on climate in Cancun that we had last week. We have a political system that seems completely incapable of acting with the urgency that we need. And so that's why it's so important that you're here on the streets today, and we're going to stay on the streets and demand action until we get it. Because we have a very clear message for government, and the message is this: that we have less than 100 months to end our carbon addiction. That cowardly inaction today is destroying not just the environment, but it's destroying people's lives now. But you can't pretend to be the greenest government ever and continue with business as usual. And so we pledge again that we will do everything in our power peacefully to prevent our headlong descent into climate chaos. Because the reality is that the UN negotiation process has become dangerously out of touch with what the science requires. On current projections, there's no way that we can keep temperatures below the 2-degree threshold. And even that threshold is no longer considered enough to prevent extremely dangerous climate change. Instead, if we continue with business as usual, the world is headed towards an average temperature rise of 4 degrees. Now that is a hellish vision. That is a vision of droughts and desertification, of hunger and disease, and of mass extinctions of species. And it's not as if we don't know how to avoid it. I keep remembering those words of Pete Postlethwaite in that fantastic film, The Age of Stupid. You remember that it's based with Pete Postlethwaite having survived a climate catastrophe. The year is 2050, and he's looking back to now, to today, and he says, in words that still keep me awake at night, he says, "Why is it that knowing what we knew then, we didn't act when we still had time?" That to me is the most important question we could possibly be posing, and that is the question we should be asking to MPs at Westminster today. Because the truth is that we know what we need. We need a massive investment in renewable energies and energy efficiency and green transport that could create 1 million new green jobs. We need a major reduction in aviation. We need a massive expansion of railways. We need to see a less meat-based diet in the West. We want crop for food, not fuels. We want a climate deal that's based on global equity, based on contraction and convergence. We demand action on the climate now, here at home, not through outsourcing our responsibilities to developing countries, but by making reductions here at home now. Governments manage to act with extraordinary urgency when there's a banking crisis, but somehow they don't seem to be able to act with that same urgency when it's a climate crisis. They can find trillions of dollars down the back of a sofa when their banks are at stake, and they can't find anything when the climate and life on the planet itself is at stake. You know, the irony is that if the planet were a bank, it would have been saved years ago. A zero carbon Britain is perfectly possible, and all that's missing is the political will, and that's why it's so important that we're here today. And so it is down to us to create that political will. And I don't know about you, but I think it's time we had a bit of a rethink of some of our tactics. Because I'm getting a bit fed up with public meetings, important though they are. I'm getting a bit fed up with lobbying governments, important though that is. I'm even getting a bit fed up with climate marches, important though that is, and it's fantastic that you're here. But this is my 7th climate march, and I don't want to be doing this in 7 years' time because we don't have time. And that's why I say that we need to build this country's largest campaign of non-violent direct action and civil disobedience so that we force politicians to respond to our demands. I want to pay tribute to those brave campaigners currently on trial in Nottingham for their involvement in planning to close down Ratcliffe Power Station last year. I want to pay tribute to Climate Rush and all of their creative ideas based on what the suffragettes did peacefully 100 years ago. Because we recognise that it falls to our generation, to this generation, to us, to act. And that is an awesome responsibility, but it's also an amazing opportunity. And you know, 100 years ago, Emmeline Pankhurst said that to be militant is a privilege. And she was right. And so let's pledge to be a bit more creative, a bit more urgent, a bit more determined, and together, the movement outside Parliament, working with those few MPs in there who do get it, together we can be a bit more militant and build that future that we dream of. Thank you.